podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you in cooperation with the SJ Network. If you're a person who'd like to appear on a podcast, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Today, we're talking to Nick Tabor of the movie theater Time Machine. Speaking of time machines, you say you found one?
Yes, I actually found a time machine. I remember it like it was tomorrow.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. We would like to give you a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial simply by heading to www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles of audiobooks and podcasts, including this one, to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now, the one and only Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, please be sure to plan when Mount Podcastia Airlines will lose your luggage at least 3 weeks in advance.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Wait a minute. It's me, Mr. Lord Bruce. I'm here filling in for Jim the Sherpa because Jim has been snowed in his cave in the Sherpa Chalet mountains, and he's currently trying to dig the snow out with a stick, which is going to take him a long time to do. But we hope he is able to get through the snow and come back and join us real soon. In the meantime, I'm Lord Bruce, and you're not. And today we have a special guest by the name of Nick Tabor. He's the host of movie theater Time Machine. So, who's our guest today, Sherpa?
Hello there, rebels of the Sherpalution. We are here in the movie theater room with Nick. He is the host of the movie theater Time Machine, and he's here to let us know about his podcast, and we're going to get to know a little about him as well. Nick, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you for having me, man. I couldn't be happier. I think it's been a long time coming, but it's just nice to see your face, man.
It's good to see you too. You know, we were just saying that we were supposed to do a project. It was me, you, yep, Brent, Ben Shrewsbury, and Matt Bracci of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
Yes, Ben, that was his name. Gosh, man, I wonder whatever happened to him, but hey, he's kind of off the radar, but okay.
Yeah, he's keeping busy. He's producing Steve Rubin's podcast, Saturday Night at the Movies.
Oh, dude, all right. Okay, so he's still in the game. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. Good.
Yeah. So with you, I've completed the trifecta of everyone from that aborted project.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaz will join the next round too, but you know, it's just nice to see it. It's nice to be here, and finally, I'm on the Sherpa show.
There you go. You made it. You've hit the semi-big time.
Yeah, that's still cool.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick.
Oh man, you know, there's a lot. I mean, I am a tremendous movie buff. By obvious with the podcast name, a movie theater Time Machine. A big time old lover of old Hollywood, but also big obsessive with movie theaters. You know, I think we're have a growing culture of the movies that we're kind of losing. Yeah, you know, it's a nice thing that we have with streaming right now, right?
Right.
You know, sit on your couch, hit a few buttons, buy a movie, and you can make your own food and just chill and go through it. Great. But there's something about, you know, going to the movie theater, you know, you hear the reel-to-reel projector in the back and, you know, just having the smell, you know, and it sounds really weird, but the smell of the stale popcorn and the screen in front of you and just feel the feeling of that. Like, okay, we're all going to have this communal experience together.
Sure.
You know, that's what Movie Theater Time Machine really does celebrate. I mean, it's the podcast, as we have our tagline, the podcast where we keep it real to real.
I like that.
You know, yeah, born out of an accident. It happened. There was a flub line that was supposed to be deleted. And I'm like, no, don't delete this. No, something hit here. Something hit here. The room feels good. Let's leave this.
Witnessing the birth of an idea.
Yeah. It was like that. It was just you have to imagine like oh gosh. You have to imagine like, young Frankenstein. You have Gene Wilder there ready to go, going, "It's alive!" And it's just, but it shouldn't have happened. He was planning to flip the switch like 20 minutes later, but he flipped it on the way out. He's like, "Dude, got this, this is great." But yeah, I mean, it really is because I have always been a teacher at heart. Always 24/7, even since I was a little kid. And one of my family members who passed away earlier this year, my grandmother, was a really, really big movie buff. And she always had it that, no matter what goes on in the world, we always go to the movies. We all can get around something. We all can get around a story. And I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
And to give you a little bit of the origin of Movie Theater Time Machine, because it's always kind of a funny story. I was on a podcast. I was invited by a friend of mine who ran a podcast called The Blockbuster Dropouts. And he ran a movie show, and it was like random movies and movies that were just released. So he invited me onto this movie, onto his show when we watched the movie called Fateful Findings by Neil Breen. And if anyone hasn't heard of it, just stay that way. It's god awful. And, I was supporting him and, running the review, and he's like, "Man, you should do this." And if anyone, really does know me, it's like a little bit of Marty McFly comes out of me. Where it's like, don't call me chicken. So if you tell me I bet you can't do this, I've got to make an effort to do it. So he tells me, he says, I bet you can't make your own show and make it better than us. And I'm like, all right, we'll do that. And I had a conversation with the guy who ran the studio that we were involved with at the time. 40 was 59 Media. And, I sold him on the idea. I said, I want to do a movie review show. He said, well, we already have a movie review show. I said, well, how about I do a movie review show of older movies? Older movies of Charlie Chaplin, of Jimmy Stewart, Marilyn Monroe, starting the random stuff like Paul Newman. And he's like, yeah, all right, let's give it a shot. I'm like, okay. And it was just born. And then he heard, the original host, Josh, actually heard my idea, and he went, all right. And he quit like about 6 months later. And we still keep going. So it's the longest running successful joke that I've ever ran.
Congratulations, Nick.
But, you do get time to enjoy it because it does become therapy after a while.
Do you feel that there's like, I guess probably the best way to put it is there's kind of like a break in filmmaking where I think you had like a lot of really classic movies in like from like the 60s to the 80s, and then maybe from like the 90s onward, the movies seem to kind of take a different tone.
Yes, I do. There's a couple of reasons why. Where it happens is because you have the birth of the movies for like for the first 50 years. So like 1900s, 1910s down to the 60s, you had it where the studios really had control over it, and they were turning out movies like,
right.
It's just like it was their job. The writers clocked in at 9, they left at 5, and whatever they put out, they went and saw, and they left, and it's just whatever it is, whatever it was, and what started from that, at that time where you had 20s, 30s, you had something like, I'm just going to like use one of the accidental classics, Casablanca. Mm-hmm. Casablanca was not supposed to be a classic, but it had several things that made it a classic, and it became that love letter that many people wanted. And then you had a lot of people starting to write their own love letters and their own movies, and like, just Just to think of like random ones, like Duel. It was Steven Spielberg's first movie, where he directed it, and Duel, the movie about a trucker being chasing this guy, and you had several others like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest starring Jack Nicholson, and more of those became love letters, and studios started to turn to writers and really breed the writers and really breed those actors. Over time, though, what happens is you had the birth of cable TV, you had the birth of other technology and rental stores and other things, and then studios got very scared. So I believe what happened and you're right, because it's like 1999 onward, you really started to lose the classics after a while.
Right.
And you still have some good ones every now and then in the recent years, but you lose their love letters because you get what I call the boardroom movie, where people are like, oh, the stats say that this is really good. The stats say that this works. Okay, let's put this actor, that actress, this person here, get the lighting to work this way, and we're going to tell this particular story. And nobody cares because you had the internet come up. And right now, you could get a movie that could very easily be circulated onto YouTube. And you don't have to go to the theater anymore. And then for years, people were scratching their head. They're like, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? They're not saying their love letter. I think now people are starting to get it again because people are using vehicles like the stories of emotion. I recently saw a great one, Wakanda Forever. Have you seen that yet?
No, I haven't.
No, have you seen Black Panther?
No, I actually never got to see it.
That's okay. I mean, you don't really have to see that one to get this one. I mean,
right.
Mostly through pop culture osmosis, but I'm not going to spoil it.
Okay.
But the theme of the movie, I mean, I myself, they deal with the King T'Challa, who was played by Chadwick Boseman. They deal with his death. And anyone who, you have the small nation of Wakanda dealing with the death of their leader, anyone who has, come from a small family like I did, where you look at it and go, okay, they're dealing with themes, and it's like how you deal with the fact that a matriarch is gone and how you deal with that. Like, anyone can relate to that and go, okay, I'm not a, you're not in the Marvel universe, but you can deal with that emotion.
Sure. Universal theme.
Yeah, you can deal with that emotion. You can say, like, you know what, I can understand this. And, going back to like things like Casablanca, Harvey, any others from Jimmy Stewart or something, they dealt with central emotions. You just happen to be told a very simple story very well. Mm-hmm. And they took the time to do that. And I think that formula is coming back. All movies are like a pendulum swing like this. And I think for a while we've been over here, towards the bad side, and it's swinging back now. And we're kind of seeing, I'm excited what happens because we've had almost a year and a half of lockdowns and, the pandemic problems. I think it's going to be really, really exciting what we see next.
It's funny. I talked to a lot of other people with movie shows, and, they seem to have the same view that, unfortunately, when you go to a movie theater, it's going to be a superhero movie, or it's going to be a sequel to another large blockbuster. They don't have the little movies anymore until it gets close. It's like Academy Award time, where you usually get a good variety of it throughout the year.
And that's happened for a while.
Yeah.
That's not anything that's new.
Yeah.
In reality, I mean, you have something that really, really pipes up. And, you had, when I was in high school, it was the love story that really drove people in. Mm-hmm. A basic emotion, guy meets girl or girl meets girl or whoever. And then there was that really big super emotion that drove everybody in, like two off the top of my head, Pearl Harbor and Titanic.
Right.
Hate those movies, myself personally. But the only movie I ever got kicked out of because I took someone to see Titanic, I wore a boat that said "Spoilers: the boat sinks." I don't know, wearing on a shirt, and they're like, "Yeah, you got to go, but worth it." But everything that did that, and now you got this phase where I think because people are looking for that, we're looking for that in this world where things are not as great. Things are not as amazing as they used to be. Where we turn on the news, this happened, that crime here, blah. I don't have to get into it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But when you see that, and then what you want to escape to is you want to see somebody who, in a world where somebody's going to swoop down and save you.
Right.
And years ago, where people, before we had dating apps, before we had all that, there's no way I can find anybody. There's no way this can happen. Boom! There's this love story. A guy can meet a girl, or the nerdy guy could finally win that, win the affection of the prom queen. How many of those did we see? How many of those do you see that same beat formula, or the nerdy girl gets the football guy, or whoever? There's many parody movies like that. I think it just affects the time. You're going to see a lot of movies now that I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of stories where it becomes reality, where it's a little more of the day-to-day stuff and it's just more interesting and more artsy films.
Mm-hmm.
Like Patton Oswalt, a great comedian, has this really good thing, this bit where he talks about reality TV.
Okay.
Reality TV is all these really weird things, and now reality TV is going to get so outlandish that reality is going to be boring. You're going to turn on reality TV, watch a guy eat soup, and you're like, okay, the guy's eating soup. Okay, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to have to fight a ninja on my way to work? There's already traffic as it is. I don't have time to fight a ninja. Or something like that. It makes sense to me because I think what we're going to see is we're going to see something like where we are now. I'm a part of a generation. I'm gently nudging 40 myself. And, from the time I graduated high school to now, my senior year of high school, we had 9/11. So we had war on terror. We had, presidents who did this and that and several things, and the birth of internet and the birth of social media. You're going to see people who might look like me, or you might have a disabled actor who starts to tell that story and everybody flocks to that. But right now we need heroes, because nothing is good. So we got to go in and say, okay, maybe we can get something where somebody might need me and, or you do what I do, where you watch kung fu films and you're really, really hoping for about 30 seconds that you get into a fight outside the theater. You watch it, you're like, all right, I'm good. You're hoping something may happen. Then you walk to the car and go, yeah, I couldn't do that.
I just paid $10 for a 2-hour training course.
Right, yeah.
It came with popcorn.
Why couldn't it work for me?
That's right.
Where's my Miyagi now, man? God rest his soul, Pat Morita.
So what kind of movies were your favorites growing up?
Growing up,
do you have like a Desert Island disc kind of list?
I will tell you, yeah, my favorite movies were always the really zany ones that are kind of forgotten now.
Mm-hmm.
But now are the old, like my favorite movie as a kid was Good Burger. Mid-90s, really funny buddy comedy. And also there were, I fell in love with a lot of Disney stuff, but one I watched ad nauseum. I remember watching The Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking for a while, like, oh, I cannot wait to be in high school because my sister's 11 years older than I am.
Okay.
And at that time, she was the same age as Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald at that time. So it kind of fit. So she stuck to it. But I couldn't wait to be those kids. I couldn't wait to be, in a way, I was almost all 5 of them in high school. And then as I got older, I'm like, the principle really makes sense right now. Yeah, those kids are punks. You know what? Yeah. He was making a lot of sense today. And then you look at it like, yeah, okay, this, Carl the janitor. Yeah, I probably am the janitor now. but regardless, yeah, those are the ones like, the buddy cop, the funny ones. And I always fell in love with cartoons. I'm an unapologetic Tom and Jerry fan. And at the time, when I was really getting used to comedy, it became, and there's 2 answers to this more, but it became comedy that, my favorite type of comedy where nobody even has to say a word, where somebody could just look at the screen and just kind of give that one little look and everybody's laughing. Mm-hmm. Or nobody has to say anything, like Tom and Jerry, they're not even saying anything. They're beating each other up. Everybody's laughing, Jerry holds a pan that's 3 times his size and there's an indentation in Tom's face. That's kind of funny, or just kind of the absurdity of it. But it was one of the inspirations of Movie Theater Time Machine, the show, and also movies growing up. It was my grandmother. Mm-hmm. I said we lost earlier this year. She made it to 96 years old, but she was really big into it. And there were things she showed me every now and then. Casablanca. One movie I loved ever since I was introduced to it is Arsenic and Old Lace.
Okay.
An absurdly crazy 1942 movie. No kid should really know this, but it's a guy he just got married. He's going to tell the aunts he got married, and it turns out the 2 of them are just killing drifters. Why? And and then his brother, who also lives with them, thinks he's Teddy Roosevelt. Why? But he has to deal with that whole situation, and the whole movie is a time lapse of about 3 hours. And it's just that dang scene, and this crazy guy who has to deal with this and going, what the hell just happened? And, those are movies myself. Like, I could tell you a plethora of them, but the absurd comedies. I don't remember how many times I watched Mrs. Doubtfire as a kid. We all know that one scene, Robin Williams is Mrs. Doubtfire, right. And he pulls his head up, he's covered in cake. Like it's still anything that man did was awesome. Just anything he did or the craziness. I could tell you so many personal stories with it, but those are mine.
You don't mind being attached to movies that are so many years old and everything like that, because I guess it probably, as you kind of said, it had that effect on you. They were memorable. Right. There were things that made you laugh, or whether you knew the reason or not. It was just there, and it was just the best kind of entertainment you could get.
Yeah. No, I don't mind it at all. I don't mind it at all, because a story in general, and I love when you see something, and you see something that's just so bizarre that nobody knows about in that first moment where you get to show a friend a movie that you never knew about. And that's the beauty of the show is, it's my wife, myself, our very good friends, Dan and Jocelyn, who are also married, who, we inflict the movies on each other. Mm-hmm. Something like, hey, I really knew about this at the time of recording this. Like, we're doing a theme of the month is what is good, bad, or bad, bad. A movie is really god-awful or a movie is amazing. And we started the month watching the movie Dolomite from 1975. A bizarre movie, but, ended up being, it has a lot of heart to it. And it was one of those 70s passion projects. Mm-hmm. There was silliness to it, but, we watched a movie and we reviewed a movie called The Air Up There. And nobody's heard about it. Have you?
It sounds vaguely familiar, Nick, actually.
Yeah. But nobody's heard about what this is. And it's a movie. It stars Kevin Bacon. He has to travel to Africa to be able to recruit some kid he found on a reel-to-reel film to play basketball in the college team that he coaches. And he ends up learning about himself.
Mm-hmm.
A formula that had repeated itself over and over again through the Disney Corporation. But it was like, okay, this is a kind of a bad movie, but, I really enjoyed this. And the fact that when you can take a movie and show somebody something and say, hey, I got something you need to see, whether it's bizarre, absurd. My favorite movie of all time is a movie, Harvey.
With Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart. Yeah, Jimmy Stewart sees a 6-foot-tall invisible rabbit. And, my friend Dan's words was, dude, I was prepared to be bored, but I was glued to my seat the entire time. Just watching, I didn't pick up my phone. I'm watching, and I'm like, wow, I'm totally fascinated. And I see you in a different light. Mm-hmm. The best reaction you could ever get. You know what? Yeah, it helps you learn about me more. And then you pick up other things and you go, because it shows emotion.
Right.
Today we could pick up and show somebody a TikTok video or an Instagram reel. They're all the same. And shows them, hey, look at this. Hey, fine. Ha, okay. And then you move on. You're not going to remember that you're a while down the road.
Right.
You're not going to but you remember the fact that you sat for an hour and a half, 2 hours and watched this and really understood the story and chatted about it later.
I think that especially recommendations from people that or even that you don't know.
Right.
And they, and you see that movie that they recommend and it's got that kind of effect on you. Like, wow, they were smart enough to think of me when they saw this movie. And, it's an interesting bonding effect.
It is. It is. It very much is. And we have fans who email into the show and tell us about, hey, I didn't think about this, but then I saw this. This was great. Thank you. This was awesome. Even, we did a month on Robin Williams. And, there's an elephant in the room when you talk about Robin Williams. When you talk about how he passed.
Right.
So we did a bit about, if you need help, who you call, or, the suicide prevention hotline and other things. And we had people just saying, thank you. Counselors who were listening to it just saying, hey, that was awesome, guys. Keep it going. And you're like, you know what? This makes it all worth it.
Sure.
This makes it all worth it. But yeah, it is a bonding thing, but it helps us also. We shine the light on movies that nobody's talking about anymore.
Yeah.
I could easily go to the movies every weekend and do a review on something, but I'm not Brad Jones. Like that, even though we interviewed Brad Jones a few weeks ago, but I'm not Brad Jones. I can't do that with that same passion of doing that. Like I just spent $17 for really lousy popcorn, a soda, and watching a movie that I really had to avoid looking at my phone, like something like this. I'm not going to do that.
We're just audio, but he was just holding his eyes open.
Oh yeah. Sorry again.
Okay.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I was mentioning recommendations because I'm going to throw a movie title at you, and I'm curious if you've ever seen it.
Let's go.
And it's called Frequency.
Tell me some actors. Who's
with Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel?
Is that the one with like he has a frequency and he finds his dad or something? Yes, I have seen this. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a movie that was actually recommended to me by my older brother, and he's like, you have to see this movie, and I was like, I do, and then I sat down, and I was like, I really like this movie.
yeah, I like that. There was a concept that was repeated to some degree, but it was a movie called Looper.
Okay.
That is almost the same thing, but it's just turned into a hitman plot with Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, actually, Frequency is a much better version of that, in my opinion, personally. But it's a good one. It's a really, really, really good one, and I think it kind of fell by the wayside because at that time it was just a little too odd.
Yeah.
in my opinion, are like, okay, that's not going to work. But also, you got to think a lot of movies get released, and there's just the unfortunate thing. I call it the UHF effect.
Right.
Weird Al Yankovic released a movie UHF that was just at the very wrong time, and it was up against Back to the Future 2 on the same weekend. I'm like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Or The Air Up There was released the same weekend Jurassic Park was released.
And that's also probably another benefit to your podcast, too, because you can bring up those movies that, well, maybe we didn't see it the first time around, but, let's talk about it now.
Let's see what happens now. That's the point. That is the point of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to shine light on something that, like, what, this really didn't have the fairest effect.
Yeah.
This really didn't have the fairest effect when it was right out of the gate. And, The Air Up There was probably sitting around in a Blockbuster. And by the time they converted from VHS to DVD, it was like, oh, yeah, that was a movie. And that's not right.
Right.
Yeah.
As we were saying earlier about the split between the older movies and the more recent movies.
Yeah.
I think now, especially with a lot of newer movies, that whole political correctness has kind of come into it. Where back in the 60s and the 70s, particularly, even the 80s, they just didn't care. They were going to say what they were going to say.
Yeah. We had a lot of issues with it a few months back. We explored some movies of Paul Newman.
Mm-hmm.
And, if anyone who doesn't know who Paul Newman is, look at your salad dressing aisle. You've probably seen his face a bunch of times. But he actually has some amazing movies to look at. Cool Hand Luke was an amazing flick to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my critic friends who I tweeted at them, like, what do you think of this? They're like, you need to see that movie. And I was really, really excited to watch a movie that I watched years back with my dad called Slapshot.
Sure.
And Slapshot mid-70s. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be great, because I remember laughing hysterically with that with my dad. And watching it now, I'm like, oh, boy. Yeah, they did not pull it. It was deep rooted in the 70s, and it was real bad. It was real bad. And some of those you watch later, and there's some 80s movies, you're right, that I think comedy also has changed quite a bit now.
Yes.
Because in a monoculture world, and I'll admit freely, I kind of subscribed to this for a little while, where the comedy became, at that time, was how funny it is that people are different than who you are.
Right.
Oh, they talk like this. How hilarious is that? Oh, they act this way. How funny is that? But now, like, the world of social media, you get to meet a lot more people, and you're out in the open and out in the adult world, and you kind of go, yeah, okay, that's not that funny, because I know 7 people who are like that. That's not great.
Right.
So the comedy becomes the like experiences, okay, you and I are somebody who, you could tell a joke. If you have comedians who talk about what it's like to be married.
Right.
Or something, you're like, okay, that's funny. You're like, okay, you get that, and you see comedians talk about it, and they cut to the audience, and husband and wives are pointing at each other, laughing, and that becomes the more communal thing. I think in the 70s, where you might say, or whatever they may have said, I know you're family friendly, so I'm trying to hold back here.
It's okay, I can always bleep you out of there.
They're like, yeah, I'm not going to do it, man. But, they're really screaming at each other or something. Then it's like, okay, you'd see that, you go to the theater, and then you leave.
Right.
You don't know who's watching the movie with you. You don't know any of that. You don't know any of that. And you go home and you're like, haha, that was so good. But now it's totally changed.
Sure.
You go home, you go on social media. Hey, this was hilarious. They're like, really? Like, no, that's not right. It's different. It's different. And I think in a very good way.
Yeah.
Because, growing up, there were street magicians that started showing how certain tricks were done.
Right.
And it really did, but it pushed magicians to get better and better and better. And eventually we got David Blaine. We don't know how that happened, but and then that happened, but then the shows got more intricate. And then when, now people want to go, and I don't know how many people have it. I've talked to a lot of people lately. They're like, oh, on my bucket list, I want to go to a Las Vegas magic show. Because that's where the really pro magicians are. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I got you. But of course, when I was a kid, you had those little rope tricks or something you did as a kid. No, those are all debunked. But I think now, look at it, I think in the defensive, quote unquote, woke culture, I think it's a good thing because it challenges entertainment. Where you see that and you put that pet project together, that's going to really test the longevity because it's either going to be a moment in time or it's going to be something everyone can relate to, and it catches the next generation coming up. Mm-hmm. And you see that now, just to shift focus off of movies, but you see it now onto TV. I don't think there is ever going to be a more successful TV show than The Office. Whether you like it or not, if you've seen some episodes, everyone can see themselves in any character.
Right.
You know what I mean? Anyone could see themselves there. And the most successful movie, you can watch it again and again. We talked about The Breakfast Club earlier. You watch it and you could see yourself in there. Like, yes, I was John. Yes, I was Bender. Yes, I was Anthony Michael Hall's character. I was Brian for a little while. And yes, I was Andrew to some degree. And growing up, yes, I am the principal. Yeah, yes, I became Richard after a while. And like, yeah, this kind of makes sense to a degree. Then again, maybe I might waver between Carl and the principal as, in my upper 30s. But I think we could see that. And if you see yourselves on a genuine level, I think that's better because we're not talking about how different everybody is. We're telling a story from our heart. I can see you just smiling. Makes sense too. So that's good.
And I know that nobody's going to walk up to you and say, Nick, does Barry Manilow know that you're stealing his wardrobe?
Barry Manilow rated his wardrobe, but I think as a kid, I probably wanted to be John Lennon.
You actually don't listen to a lot of other podcasts, but you said there was one other, that 30-20-10, is that?
Yes, 30-20-10. I mean, honestly, I drew a lot of inspiration from them in the way, especially there's one of the co-hosts, Diana Goodman, who really prides herself on being the young, nostalgic one. Mm-hmm. I think she's almost my age or maybe a little bit older, but does this bit called Diana's Classic Corner. And, the show reviews pop culture from 30, 20, and 10 years ago from that week they release it.
Okay.
What movies, what books, whatever happened, what news happens. But then she shifts it and says, okay, that week of release, let's shift it 75 years ago, 50 years ago. And the way that she presents that old nostalgia of, oh my God, you have to see this. I look at that energy and, it was 75 years before. I'm sorry. It was 65 years before recently was a movie called The Man Who Shot Liberty Vance. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about that one?
That was a John Wayne movie, right?
John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding flick.
Okay.
We reviewed that on my show, and we had the curator of the Jimmy Stewart Museum on to help us. Which is great. It was just everything about it was phenomenal. But the funny thing is like, Jimmy Stewart is just chewing the scenery of everything he did. It was just, you see Harvey, you see the, oh my gosh, how come I can't think of that movie that's on Christmas all the time?
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like you immediately click It's a Wonderful Life, Shop Around the Corner or something like that, or anything. But when nobody really thinks about this, but then you get John Wayne. John Wayne, I mean, growing up, my grandfather was just a diehard John Wayne fan. Like, he never said anything bad about John Wayne. He loved all the cowboy movies. Oh, I love all his films. My sister, I told the story, an abbreviated version of it. My sister would bring boyfriends over, and my family would always just welcome everybody right away. Mm-hmm. Now, come to dinner. Let's do this. Let's get but if she brought a boyfriend or somebody to meet our grandfather, it was like meeting the mafia, Don. It was like, okay, you're coming to see Don Corleone, and if he approved, yeah, you were good. You were fine. We had one guy, I remember, brought him in, and he's like, oh, John Wayne is nothing but a god-awful, awful, awful human. And he was gone, like, within 5 minutes. Like, I don't like you very much, But John Wayne in this movie is the stereotype older John Wayne. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that he had a different script when he first started, but he couldn't remember any of the character names. He calls everybody Pilgrim in this movie, but it's just like he's walking around and hey there, Pilgrim. Like, you could see the gears in his head shifting and rusting a little bit. Like, he can't get it, but there's like, Pilgrim, his name's Joey, his name's Pilgrim. It's just fascinating. Just to see that turn, and in my head, I got the 6-year-old in the back of my brain saying, Papa's not going to like you to hear this, but now I'm like, okay, I can, I can give a little bit to John Wayne now. He's been dead about 20 years. I'm good. But it's such a fascinating flick. It is on Hulu for anyone who's listening with it, and I strongly recommend it. It's one of those that I would say, Blu-ray buy it if you find it. It's kind of hard release, but it's one of my strongest ones, really.
Okay. We have a portion of the show, and it is called Shameless Self-Promotion.
Shameless Self-Promotion.
And this is where you can let everybody know where they can follow you and get in touch with you.
Oh, sure. Our best way that you can do it, our Facebook page, Movie Theater Time Machine, or email movietheatertimemachine@gmail.com. You can catch us anywhere where there's a podcast, any streaming service. We're everywhere possible. Really, email would be our best one right now. We're trying to revamp our social media. Very soon, we're going to have a website. We're working on that right now. But really, that would be our best. So we're trying to stay off Twitter until we kind of see how the fire's dying down.
You have to see what demons leave first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And see what's left and just try to really roast the marshmallow off that fire.
Yeah. I kind of get the feeling that Twitter is going to become like the next MySpace.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really circling the drain unless they figure out something, and they're like, ooh. I hear about it on the news, and it's just like more and more like, what happens?
Well, I think I'm going to stick with it, and if it goes under, maybe they'll give me an electric car for consolation or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
This is Nick Tabor. He is the host of Movie Theater Time Machine. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, man. My pleasure. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Be a rebel. Follow the show at Sherpalution on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Thanks to Nick. Check out his show, and thanks for listening. Catch the show on any podcast app or Sherpalution.com. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at Sherpalution. Leave us a nice review. Go ahead, make my day on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, viva la Sherpalution. Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Yo, come back now, you hear?